I'd like to call this meeting to order. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we're in Treaty 1 territory in the traditional homeland of the Métis Nation. My name is Lynn Nesbitt. I'll be chairing the panel today. To my left is Gisela Rempel, and to her left is Richard Whitbread. Our secretary is Cara Balshaw, and our assessor today is Mark Colatruglio. Hope I said that right. We'll be hearing applications for revision of the assessment roll in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision is requested have been described in each application, and we'll limit discussion to those matters. The statements that applicants or the assessor make at this hearing are sworn testimony, and anyone speaking to the matters must be sworn in. Be advised that comparisons of assessments of properties are not considered evidence of market value by the Board of Revision. The Board of Revision is appointed annually by Council and is independent of it and the City Administration. It makes its decisions on the basis of the evidence provided at this hearing and issues a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the Board's decisions with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or to the Court of Queen's Bench if the matter pertains to the application of exemptions from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included with the Board's order. With respect to the hearing process, I will confirm the matters to be addressed with each applicant following the swearing in. We will then have the assessor's testimony followed by questions that the applicant may have, and then the applicant's testimony followed by questions. Each side will have an opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all the evidence about an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for each item on the docket today. The session will close after all the applications have been heard, and the Board will deliberate in private and make its decisions. You will receive the order by registered mail as soon as possible. As information, all public hearings are recorded and will be part of the public record. And can you please turn your cell phones off or put them on silent if you haven't already done so.
Please state your name.
Mark Colatruglio.
Do you swear the evidence you present today is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. Will you swear in or affirm?
Swear.
Okay, please state your name.
David Nishi-Beckingham.
Do you swear the evidence you present today is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I so swear.
Thank you.
Welcome, Mr. Nishi-Beckingham. So today we have, I think 6 or 7 items on our docket, and I think the item under appeal is annual rental value for each.
Yes.
Okay. All right, we'll start with 35 Lakewood Boulevard. When you're ready, Mr. Colatruglio.
This is file number 19-5162. The property address 35 Lakewood Boulevard. The business assessment ID 51393. The business name Walmart, and the owners Walmart Canada Incorporated. We have a total annual rental value under appeal of $1,453,080. The total area of the premises 97,197 square feet, and the overall annual rental value per square foot at $14.95. I'm actually making a recommendation to make a change to that annual rental value. If you flip to page 2, you'll see the original parameters. So originally there was a base ARV per square foot of $12.50, and then the occupancy costs applied to the total area of the premise to arrive at that $1,453,080. The revision that I'm making on the first page you'll see is the base ARV per square foot of $11.30. Where that number comes from is in talks with the assessor who dealt with the majority of the Walmarts in the city on the realty files. The range in regards to the rents that were applied on the realty varied. Most were between $11 and $12. The recommendation is consistent with other Walmarts in the city for the realty, the rents that were applied on the realty. So $11.30 is what we're recommending today. That brings us to base annual rental value of $1,098,326, and then plus the occupancy cost, $238,133, for a total annual rental value, $1,336,440. That was the recommendation. Now, there is an error that I'd like to draw to your attention on the first page. Subject lease information under that category. The reported area for the premise there is incorrect, as you'll see from the top of the page compared to this cell here on the right-hand side. And that's also an incorrect rent that's being calculated due to that. So if you flip to one, two, and I apologize, I didn't have time to number the pages. But if you flip to page 4 of the, not 3, page 5. This is part of the rent roll for this property. And you'll notice at the bottom, it says Southdale Center, Unit SD01, SD1A, Walmart. They show a total leasable area 98,697. There is a discrepancy between that number and what's shown on the front page, and that's due to the McDonald's that's located within the subject property. So in this case, we're just talking about the Walmarts, so it's slightly lower than that, but I'd just like to make sure that you guys are aware of that incorrect rent that's showing on the first page. If you look a bit further down that column, you'll see that the blended rent there is $6.66 as reported on the mailer. There was a few things that when we were analyzing this, this lease appears to start October 1st of 1965. It's quite an old lease, and the lease extends to January 31st of 2022. When we were reviewing this lease, there was some questions as to whether this lease was inherited, and this Walmart location has been a variety of different stores in the past. I believe at one point it was a Kmart, it was a Zellers at one point, it was a Target at one point, so it's been through a variety of tenants. This lease we have come across in dealing with all of those tenants, so it appears to be something that has been lingering and gone with the property since the 60s when this was originally signed. I didn't include it in the package, but on the following page of this rent roll, they show renewal options well into 2065. So it appears they've set out renewal options for a 100-year term from when they signed that original lease. And there isn't any information that would suggest that any of the renewals would be negotiated at a fair market value. It's to us, when they're submitting this mailer, we don't get a copy of the full lease, we don't know all the details. But what we see is that a 100-year span of this lease, there's many options to renew, but they don't suggest that there's a renewal at market value. So that is our concern with an old lease like this, is typically we would look to the market and try to get a sense of, you know, what a market rent would be as of the reference date. I did provide some rental comparables here. Now, again, some of these stores, the leases are 20, 30 years old. They're nearing the end of their life. Some of these are up for renewal in the next couple of years. But this is the information that we have now. If you look at the rental comparables I provided on the first page, 750 St. James, that's a large retail store. That we have a lease start date showing of October 1st of 2011. The reported rent there, $17.50. Below that is another large retail store. This is an older lease signed in 1998. They have a $12 rent. Below that, 1399 McPhillips. This is also a former Zeller's location. This has been converted into a grocery store. I think it goes to show that some of this retail space with the right tenant, with the right property owners, can be repurposed for a variety of different things. The rental rate there, now this one is slightly smaller than the subject property that we're dealing with today, but the rental rate there signed in November of 2016 at $14 a square foot. And the last one is 1065 St. James. It's a 30-year lease, similar in size to the subject property, and the rental rate there, $11.25. So very close to the $11.30 that I'm suggesting today for the subject property. That is my presentation for this property. I'm open to any questions.
Thank you very much. Mr. Nishi-Beckingham, we have a recommendation on the table. Are you accepting the
No,
recommendation?
we're not accepting that
Okay,
recommendation.
and carry on to the questions of the assessor.
Sure. The 750 St. James, you say the start date, 2011. I believe that's the Canadian Tire.
Correct.
So the 2011, that's not really the start date of the lease, that's the step-up date of the lease.
Okay.
That makes sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
I'm trying to remember here, but it's 2305, is that the Rona?
Nope.
Oh, okay, no, that's not. I'm not sure what that one is.
That one,
And then the grocery store, that was an old Zeller's. Did they use the entire Zeller's space, was only 65,000 square feet, or did they have to demise some other spaces off of that?
I'm not certain on that. I know that primarily the store is the old Zeller's location. Whether or not they used all of it, I'm not certain.
Okay, there's a difference between 65 and
Yeah,
basically
absolutely.
100,000.
Yep.
There's quite a bit of difference of excess space there. What can be done with that? Okay. No further questions.
Thank you very much. Mr. Woodruff, do you have any questions?
No, I have nothing, thanks.
Ms. Rempel?
Yes, I just want to make sure I understand. So you say that some of the space, is it some of the 97-197 that is occupied by McDonald's bringing?
No. So, again, if you go to that page 5, and I
Yeah.
do apologize for not numbering them, they show the total area there, 98,697.
Yeah,
We have 97,197, and that's because we have a separate bid associated with the McDonald's.
Okay.
Yeah.
the other thing I'm wondering about is whatever page this is, the lease.
Yeah.
It says 1665 Peniston Boulevard?
Yeah, so again, a lot of the stuff that was attached here was supporting documents that were used in the realty cases. They're there for information purposes. We're dealing with Lakewood today.
Yes.
I don't have, we're lucky sometimes to get some of the lease information. It's very difficult sometimes. The owners are hesitant for privacy reasons or whatever to share copies of the lease. Sometimes we do get some excerpts, and that's what was given in regards to Keniston, and I believe further down in the package, we have another one for Regent. I don't have that same information for Lakewood. It's there for you guys to look at, whether you put a lot of weight in it in regards to today's case for Lakewood. Yeah, use it at your own discretion. It's not something that we have for the Lakewood that I could find at least. I may have missed it, but yeah, I couldn't find that information. And most of the suggestions in regards to the Lakewood, when looking back, again, was an old lease that had, kind of followed with the changes that occurred at the property over the course of many years.
Okay, thank you.
I just have some questions. You've included some board orders in your package. Can you explain what they are?
Correct, yeah.
And why we should be looking at them?
So there's some municipal board orders. Basically, this information was attached into here. For some of the realty cases, there was, with the Walmarts, there was some discussions about whether we should factor in tenant inducements, things like that. The municipal board orders are there for you guys to read if that comes up as part of the discussion today. I put them in because if I didn't put them in, and then it came up, I don't really have evidence to speak to. We'll see what Mr. Nishi-Beckingham presents in regards to those things and whether there are any changes to the rent calculations based on tenant inducements and things like that. But basically, and again, I do apologize for the no pages, there is a page that kind of summarizes the concerns for those board orders. So that's part of our rebuttal package
All right.
that we've used in the realty. So it is there if you guys want to have a look at it, if the discussion goes that way.
Okay, so we'll wait
Correct,
and
yeah.
see how relevant those are. All right, Mr. Nishi-Beckingham?
Lakewood?
Says Lakewood on
Yeah,
it?
it
Yeah.
does.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My apologies, I've taken the realty brief that we had and I've shrunken it down to the business brief. So now that I read it, I was reading it last night, it's like, oh, there's a bunch of errors in there. And we'll skip over and go to the main highlighted points. I've noticed on a few of these, there's a couple of those that I didn't notice. Basically, we're asking for a premise value of $6.75 for a total business assessment of $894,000. Just turning the pages over to, there's a little bit about the property summary. This is the property at 35 Lakewood. It was a Zellers earlier in its life, became a Target, and now it's a Walmart store. Turning the pages over to where it says assessment history. And again, like the assessor, I forgot to number my pages on this one, but I did number them on the other one, so we're good there. We can see the 17 to 19, the difference between the two cycles is about a 12% increase in value. Just showing the, turning the page, showing the location and some photographs of the subject property. Just a short provincial overview of the next few pages there, just showing that on the whole, Manitoba's economy is humming along, not expected any great gains, but not expected any big declines, and just sort of keeping going at a steady rate. Looking at the next, just a Winnipeg overview, next few pages, again, similar starts and review, and showing that, again, just sort of expecting a constant slow growth rate over time. Turning to the next, the big thing that's happened since last cycle and this cycle, and they always refer to it as, I like the name, as the retail apocalypse. Especially for the large anchor type stores. There's been a large number of those type of stores that have closed down. We can see in the figure 1, this is out of the United States, showing all the retail stores that have closed in 2018. And then showing the list, on list 1, there retail is closing and downsizing in Canada, a large number of them. And next one is figure 2, showing that there is a list of Canadian anchor size retailers are shrinking, so that the people that can take up these spaces is shrinking, and when you have less demand and a constant supply, you should have a decreasing value, is what it is. Looking at, turning the page there, page numbering kicked in, on page 24, the bottom page there, talking about the Sears closing. And we'll look at the figure 4, talking about the Sears and Target backfill there. And basically out of the Sears stores, it looks like we've got one filling up there on the McPhillips at 2311 McPhillips, Seafood City.
but they're only taking 43,000 square feet out of the 92,000 square feet, so they're not even taking up the full amount of the space. And then we turn to page 26 and we can look at, well, what's happened to the target locations. And what's basically happened is that they've had to either spend a big ton of money to redevelop these spaces to get other smaller tenants in, or they've managed to find a large tenant like a Walmart or a Canadian Tire to go in. So if we look here, we have 1485 Portage. They've had to turn that whole section into a call center, a HomeSense and a Winners there. We look at the Kildonan Place shopping center, and they did major redevelopment there. They've got the Marshalls HomeSense, H&M, Urban Planet. So they basically demised the space into a whole new shopping experience. Or then we look at 35 Lakewood, which was the Walmart, has moved in there. And then if we look at the 1080 Grant, there's the Canadian Tire and Good Life Fitness. And that's an interesting one in the fact that the Canadian Tire didn't even take up the entire space. They took up a good chunk of it, but the remaining space was taken up by Good Life Fitness. And we'll see as we go through what those lease rates were. I'm just going to turn to page 31 and just go through some of these lease rates. And so I looked at all the Canadian Tire and Walmarts, which are basically your large box type stores. I've got the one at 1080 Grant, which is, again, it's an anchor type store in the mall. They only took 86,000 square feet, and if we refer back, there was a total of 116,000 square feet. They took 86,000 square feet at $6.75. There is the Canadian Tire at 720, 750 St. James. This is an older 2008 lease, and I've got some details on that one I'll go through. And I've calculated a lease amount of $15.41 for it. And then there is the Canadian Tire at McPhillips, and again, that's where they took over some space there in the mall. And again, that was back in 2008, and I've calculated a $10.43 as a rent for that. The big difference, of course, being in 2008, that's when Target was coming into the market, and lots of people were vying for space and spending a lot of money on their stores to upgrade them and getting ready. Since then, there's been quite a bit of change in the market. Obviously, Target has left, now Sears has left, and there's a lot more vacant space kicking around. Looking at the Walmart spaces, there's the Subject, which is 35 Lakewood, at $6.66. Then there's the Walmart at Regent at $6.60. There's the Unicity Mall Walmart at $8.24. The one in the mall at St. Mary's there at St. Vital at $8.16 in 2003. And then one on Keniston at $6.36. So if we look, if we go over to Appendix B, I've got some leasing information there. I've got, and this is where the numbering stop again. Sorry, pigeon. This is the first page there. It's the same chart, just larger format, so it's easier to read. And I've got the lease analysis there for 720 St. James. That was and that's referred to as 750 St. James in the assessor's report. That was an original lease in 2000, and then it was original lease was for 20-year term. So normally be coming up at this time. But what they did is 8 years into the term in 2008, again because the market was changing and there was the Target was moving in, they needed to spend some money on the store and upgrade it and get it ready. They renegotiated the lease for 2008-2011 at $16.30, and 2011 to 2023 at 1750, and that's what the assessor is reporting there, is the term there, at 1750. And they basically got an inducement of 1.8 million to upgrade their store, and I've subtracted out the inducement to get a net rent of 1541. But if you look at the average rate, it's 1726 on this revised, and they've expanded their store at that point by 9,500 square feet. So not really a normal lease transaction, an arm's length transaction, because of sort of partway into the term, they wanted to change the nature of the lease. And that's the same thing that happened with 2305 Phillips Street. That's a 15-year lease. It was originally a 15-year lease in 1998 at $10 a square foot. They got a $5.6 million inducement at that point. And then again in 2008, 10 years into the term, they have 5 years left. They renegotiated to try and pull out another $1 million so they can upgrade the store and make some expansion. And then it was at $11 from 2008 to 2013, and from 2013 to 2018 at $12 a square foot. So they're averaging around $11.50 a square foot. And that was their expansion space there. I've included, just turning the pages so you can see this was back in 1999 from Target. This is their update and expansion of the space. They've got 2 spaces at 2 different rates. They had, and it averages out at the 666, and that's for the next 3 pages there. And then turning it over, I've included the landlord consent to assign an assumption of lease agreement made 11th of June 2015. That was between Target, Walmart, and Morgard Realty Trust Investments. Basically, where they agreed, yes, let's get Walmart in there, and then that lists all. Further down to that agreement, they list all the other modifications that they've made in 2011, 2013 on there. So basically, the landlord was struck with an idea when Walmart came to them, either let Walmart in at this rate. If the market was there, they could have renegotiated the rate at a higher rate if they felt there was something there. Or they could have said, no, let's not have Walmart in here, let's re-demise the space, redevelop the site. And as we saw back earlier, the market has changed quite a bit for these larger spaces, and they're stuck with either taking the new people in, like the Canadian Tire or Walmart at a low rate, or they are going to have to spend quite a bit of money and quite a bit of risk to find new tenants and re-demise the space. So we've got 2 examples of that: the subject site and then the other site at 1080 Grant, where they're anchored in strip malls. And the 1080 Grant was the Canadian Tire, where they only took 86,000 square feet for that, and that was at the 675. So just in conclusion, we're asking for the 675 as a fair market rent, and that comes to a business value of $894,212.
Thank you very much. Mr. Cole, would you agree? Do you have any questions?
I do have a few questions. So let's start with the assessment history. That was on your page 4 or 5, correct?
Yes.
So the 2019 there, that's previous year's ARV, correct?
Yes.
So this percentage increases between the previous cycle
And this site.
and this, no, 2019 would have been last cycle,
Oh,
correct?
sorry, yeah, I think I got the wrong date, so it's from last cycle to this cycle, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So that should be 2020, correct?
Yeah, and I guess it should be 2018. I'm off by a year, right?
Gotcha.
I,
Yeah.
I wrote down what years I
No,
went
no.
to hearing, and I want to know what years they were for, yeah. So that should be 2018 to 2020.
Okay, so the 2017 at just under 1.3 million in regards to annual rental value. Today you're suggesting 860,000.
Yes.
It's a significant reduction.
And just as a reminder, we're not putting
Comparing
any
assessments.
weight
Yeah,
on
absolutely.
previous assessments.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Thank you.
And my main thing is that I think I put evidence in to show that the market has certainly changed a lot since that last cycle, and is showing a dramatic decrease in the values versus what was happening at that time.
Okay. Now, just in regards to the Sears repurposing and the Target backfill, as of the reference date, there absolutely still is some vacancy in regards to redevelopment at Kildonan Place in regards to the Sears space, and Polo Park, I believe, is currently undergoing a redevelopment plan for that space as well. Garden City was kind of the first to actually open the doors on some new retail that's in there with the Seafood City. But as of the reference date for the Targets, most of the space has been filled, correct?
Yes, if you look at the Target space, they've either had to be redemised, so they're not large format spaces like the Subject, or the last two being they've got two of the large format spaces, the Walmart and the Canadian Tire, the Subject and the one at 1080 Grant.
Okay. And then just in regards to the adjustments on the leases and the lease analysis, so I also used the 750 St. James as the comparable, and you are correct in that we used the 1750 from the 2011 to 2023 term. So yeah, that may have been a step up, like you were suggesting. The inducements amount to $1.85 a square foot, is that correct?
Yes,
And so that's the adjustment that you're making.
yes.
In your conversations on some of the realty files, has it been brought to your attention that in Manitoba, we do have some case law that would suggest that we don't look at the tenant inducements and?
Yes.
Okay, so you are aware of that?
I am aware of that, and then, yeah, we'll have to find a test case
Yeah.
on that one to go forward again. Because if you review the literature on tenant inducements, you have to go to the market to see what the market does, and if inducements are part of it, then they need to be taken into account as part of it. So I understand that Manitoba has some case law on that, but.
The same Appraisal Institute of Canada textbook that you're
Yeah.
referring to, right? Has some information in regards to percentage rents as well.
Yeah.
And that they should be looked at in regards to the income or the revenue that's associated with the percentage rents
Yes.
along with the base rent.
Yeah.
I'm noticing on the back, this is Zeller's, I guess it would have been a lease modification agreement.
Yeah.
They do reference some percentage sales there.
Yeah, and that, I didn't include all the modifications since then, but part of Target's moving in, when, we represented Target at the
Right,
time.
right.
Part of Target's moving in, they removed all those percentage rent clauses
Okay,
on
so
there.
is any of this in place for the Walmart?
No, because they
arrangement?
were removed at when Target got there.
Okay, so but the lease was taken on then from Target to Walmart? So it
Yes.
wasn't negotiated necessarily between Walmart and,
Well, it was an agreement
And
between
the owner?
basically three parties, right? So it was between Target, Walmart, and the Morguard Real Estate Investment Trust, right?
but at the
owners.
time of this, it would have been Morguard dealing with Zellers. And
In
then-
1999, it was
Yeah.
Morguard dealing with Zellers, yeah.
Yeah, and-
And then when Target moved in, because if you look at, there's like a ton of, the things with leases is they're sort of ongoing relationships, they're not like one-time deals. So if you look at the Schedule A lease particulars, they list a whole bunch of modifications that they've made in 2000, 2011, 2013. I've got a bunch of those, but one of those modifications, they got rid of the percentage rent
Okay.
on there. Yeah,
But we don't show that here.
I'm not you know, because once you start bringing all those,
Yeah,
you gotta-
No, no,
I just tried to put the
understand, yeah.
pertinent stuff in there.
I guess for me, the only other question would be in regards to the age of the lease, right? It is a 1965 start on the lease.
Yeah.
And it does appear that for the Zellers, they're not re-signing a lease, they're modifying the existing agreement. So they have taken on whoever the previous tenant's lease was, and they've made some modifications. I don't see anything here in regards to renegotiating the lease at a fair market value. And like, again, it just appears that it's the $650 that was there for the existing store, and then they've used the $715 for the expansion area, but they don't suggest anywhere that there was negotiations as of the date of a fair market rent, right?
Well, as part of their assumption and lease agreement, I mean, that all goes into their assumption and lease agreement that they're going there. So if they wanted to, if the landlord was saying, no, I don't want Walmart, I don't like Walmart as the type of tenant in this neighborhood, they could have not agreed to it. They could say, yeah, listen, there's more money in redeveloping the store into multiple CRU units, so they could not have agreed to it in that respect. They could have said, yeah, Walmart can come in, but we want some changes done. So when you come to that lease agreement, that there is the opportunity to negotiate if they feel they should. But there's no specific here that says we renegotiate the rate and feel that that's fair market rent. And you usually won't find that in lease agreements. They just say what the rate is.
Yeah, now,
Right.
on the mailer for this property, there's a series of renewals dates that go, like I said, well into 2065, I think.
Yeah.
So 100 years from when it was originally signed. Sometimes we encounter on the mailers an indication of a term or the fact that there is an intention at a certain step up to renew at a fair market value, but here they don't show any of that, correct? No further questions, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Rimpel, do you have any questions?
Yes, I just have a few. Thank you for your presentation. You've given us an overview of what's happening in the market in Winnipeg and in Manitoba. What I'm curious about is what's happening with Walmart. What is their overview? What is their history in Manitoba and in Winnipeg? Have they had large store closures? Or have they moved into spaces that have been left as a result of store closures by others? I don't think I know of any Walmarts that have closed.
No, there's not any Walmarts that have closed in Winnipeg that I'm aware of. They've expanded their space, but it goes to, they've expanded their space at what cost have they expanded their space to? So they've managed to expand their space at very low rates. They said, yeah, we can make a business case by moving in at these low rates, and that's been a big change. You know, if they were paying $11, $12 a square foot, they may not have moved into to basically, you know, that's almost double the rent from what they're paying. They may not have moved to those spaces. Okay, so they have expanded into new spaces where they can get good rates.
Okay. The other thing I'm curious about is it says it's page 31
Yeah.
in your brief, and you've got the lease rates for a number of the Walmarts, but you've got 1000 Taylor Avenue with no lease.
Yeah, that's a land lease, that one is.
Okay.
So the lease rate there was for the land. Walmart built and owned the store, so it's not a normal market rental rate.
Okay.
Yeah, Walmart's preferred, I'll go through Walmart's preferred method of owning properties. They prefer to own the property if they can. Second, excuse me. Second, they prefer to do a land lease so that they've got total control over the building. And then third option for them is to do a long-term lease, because they want to have super, like the subject's case, as much as possible in the future. So they usually don't if they sign a 20-year term, they'll usually have options up to 100 years on there for rates.
So they're assuming there's gonna be some longevity in the market?
Yeah, they'll want some long-term.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, just on the Walmart as the one example for the subject, but there's also we do have an example of 1080 Grant, which is a Canadian Tire, similar example where they moved in at 675 and not even taking up the entire space.
Right,
Right, so that was the other large format that moved into a mall.
thank you.
Mr. Whitbread, do you have any questions?
No, I have none, thanks.
No questions? Is there any need for,
I don't think so, no.
no, we're good?
So we're good?
Okay. So we will, I understand that the property, 845 Dakota Street, has been withdrawn from our docket
Just this morning,
just this morning.
I can forward you the withdrawal mark.
Sure.
Okay.
David actually discussed it with me prior to the hearing.
Okay, all right.
We do talk.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good, okay. So we'll move then to 3655 Portage Avenue, Unit 200. Mr. Carpenter, when you're ready.
File number 19-5163, the business assessment ID 5316, the address 200-3655 Portage Avenue. The owner is Walmart Canada Incorporated. So again, we're dealing with another Walmart here. I'll try to keep the presentation a little more brief, as I think I hit a lot of the points in the previous one. Now, in this case, there is a higher lease rate in place. They report to us $824 as the net rent there. Just like the previous one, I have this a similar recommendation in regards to adjusting the base annual rental value per square foot that we've applied. So page 2, you'll see the original $13.40 that was used. That's to come to the $2,001,480 annual rental value that's under appeal. The recommendation that I'm proposing is based on $11.30 plus the occupancy costs to arrive at the recommended annual rental value, $1,736,280. Again, we're dealing with a large retail store. We looked to the market for these, the 1750, the Canadian Tire at St. James that was referenced. That was one of the ones we looked at. McPhillips, 2305 McPhillips, again, $12 a square foot. No adjustments have been made on the city's end for tenant inducements, like we kind of discussed briefly on the previous file. We take the information that's reported to us by the owners, so that's kind of what we're looking at. Rental comparables reported to us by property owners that operate or have large format retail space in the city of Winnipeg. The realty on this case was settled, I believe, at $12 a square foot. So significantly higher than the reported rental rate per square foot that we show for the subject lease. And part of that was, again, just in discussion with the agents representing the owners of those properties and talking about some of the market rents of other large format space in Winnipeg retail space. So that's my recommendation for this property. $1,736,280. Thank you.
Mr. Yushibekinghan, do you have a response to the recommendation?
I have a response. We're not accepting the recommendation. Part of the problem we run across to is the tenant's right of appeal in the realty end. They don't have one, so in this case, so they certainly weren't happy with the realty side of things. So I do have a brief here for this. Can I just
Well, you
hand it
can-
out, or
you
I
can
don't
ask
have any questions. I think
No
we
questions?
I mean, as long as we bring forward everything we've talked about so
Okay,
far, it's
absolutely.
pretty much the same.
Okay.
This one's just a little slightly different, but I'll go over the differences in my
Mr.
brief.
Whitbread, do you have any questions?
I'm
with
fine,
this assessment?
thanks.
Ms.
I
Ryan?
have none, thank
And
you.
I have none. Okay.
this one actually has all the page numbering in. So we on top left-hand corner, go by those page numbering. I think at some point the bottom page numbering kicks in, but I'm not sure. Just go for the top page numbering there. So on page 3, just looking at, we're asking for a premise rent of $10 a square foot for a total business assessment of $1,572,000. Just quick on page 7, this is the assessment history, same error with regards to the dates, but it's basically last cycle to this cycle. If you go to page 8 and 9, just showing the map and the overview. The difference here being that this was basically a purpose-built Walmart. They built it as a Walmart, and it's basically what we refer to as a standalone store. So we've got different types of Walmart stores. Standalone stores tend to have slightly higher rents because they're less CRU spaces that they can, the landlord can apportion off on to make an income from. So they don't have, their percentage of anchor space to CRU space is smaller in these type of plazas. So basically the Walmart parking and all that covers more land, and they'll need a slightly higher rent to cover all those expenses. That's why we're asking for a $10 rent on this one. If we, pretty much basically the same, we can go to page 36, same leases that we talked about earlier, and same lease analysis on page 37, and then I included the parts for the schedule there on 35 Lakewood, and I believe the assessors included, because I know we sent that to them a while ago, their Unicity Walmart one, that's the lease rate, again, not page number, but he listed there, that's the page out of the Walmart showing the basic rent. They're basically a straight 20-year term at their rent, which was at $824. That's it.
That's it?
And
Thanks.
yeah, and then just the discussions that we talked about earlier, bringing those forward as well, so.
Thank you. Mr. Colatripio, any questions?
I just have one question, just to clear up the table here in regards to the leases.
Yeah.
What page do you want?
This is page 31.
So
So
that's the,
some of these, like, for example, the Unicity Walmart there.
sorry, just let me just get that.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, so the Unicity Walmart there, $824, that's the base rent from the lease, no modification in regards to tenant inducements, et cetera, right?
Yeah.
There was none
There was
right?
no tenant inducements on this
Correct,
one, yeah.
correct.
Got it.
Which of these have had adjustments for the tenant inducements?
Well, it would have been the two, the St. James and the McPhillips one.
Just the two
Yeah.
there?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. And nothing in regards to 1080 Grant?
No, they, that's the rate was $675. They did get a, I can't remember now, it was $1 or $2 million inducement for tenant improvements there, somewhere around there.
Okay, but it's not
But
factored
I
in.
did not, I just, it's their straight rate.
Okay.
So I think they obviously had to put up divising walls and stuff like that to separate out the space.
Okay, no further questions. Okay.
Mr. Whitbread, do you have any questions?
No, nothing.
Ms.
I
Ryan?
have your.
Thank you, and I have as well. Thank you very much. Okay, we shall go to 3651 Portage Avenue. That's number 8 on our spreads. When you're ready, Mr. Colatripio.
Thank you. File number 19-5165. The business assessment ID.
Can you just hold on 1 second, I gotta grab the right page here.
Sure.
Got too much paper going on here.
This is 3651 Portage.
That's that one. the same page as you.
Gotcha. So business assessment ID 32410, the address 3651 Portage Avenue, the business name Winners, and the owners Winners Merchants International LP. The total annual rental value under appeal $496,560. The total area of the premise 27,927 square feet, and the overall annual rental value per square foot, including the occupancy costs, at $17.78. That's based on a base annual rental value of $15.33, the rent, plus the occupancy costs to arrive at the $496,560. The subject property shows a lease in place, signed September of 2003, 20-year term, 20-year 4-month term, for the full area of the store, reported at $13. Again, it's a lease that we're in the last few years of that lease. When we're looking at these, we try to look at leases that are signed closer to the reference date to get an indication of what the fair market rent would be for something like this. The rental comparables I've provided. There is a correction that I'd like you guys to make on the bottom comparable, 1570 Regent. The bid and the premise do not match, and that's because I went and typed over what was generated by our system based on a different property that was not appearing in our search. So the lease information you show is not associated with the bid number 42727. You can scratch those out. It would be a different bid and a different premise. As well, the $14.45 was also incorrect. The actual rate there was $20 a square foot. So keep that in mind, put as much weight as you'd like on it. There is a range in regards to the rental comparables. We tried to look at retail space. The first three are right in the immediate area of the subject property, right on Portage, in that 3600 block. And varying in size, some of these are most of them are smaller than the reported area of the subject property, but they're close, and you know, if we're factoring in some economies of scale, you know, you may see some reduction in the rents, but when you're comparing the 1533, the modeled rent that's applied, and you're looking at 3647 Portage at 1650, that's 4,000 square feet, just about 4,000 square feet smaller. The 1533 doesn't seem too unreasonable. $16, 3647 Portage as well. 3673 Portage Avenue, $19.75. So there is a range in regards to the rents that the owners of these properties are able to receive in the market now. You'll notice that these leases are a bit newer in regards to the start dates, 10 years for the majority, or for all three that are located in the 3600 block of Portage. The other one, 840 St. James, that one's signed in November of 2011. It's a 5-year lease term. So that would actually be up as of the reference date. That one was at 1675. And then, yeah, the 1570 Regent, that's a craft store, larger format retail, not as big obviously as the Walmarts we just spoke about, but closer in regards to the Winners that we're looking at today. 25,104 square feet at $20 a square foot. So there is a bit of a range in regards to the rents that the property owners seem to be able to generate. The 1533 does seem to be on the lower end of that range. So I think it's reasonable to apply that to the subject property. That's my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Nishi-Beckingham?
Just a question with the 840 St. James.
Yeah.
What was the renewal rate on that?
That I don't have with me, so I'm not certain.
Which store is that in?
That's a craft store.
840 is a craft store. I thought 1570 was a craft store.
They both are craft store.
Okay.
Yeah.
And no newer leases than, I guess the newest one you got is 2015, right?
Correct, yeah, the newest ones would be the 2014 and 2015 leases that are shown there.
Nothing around 2017, 18 or anything like that?
No.
No, okay, thank you. No further questions.
Mr. Whitbread, do you have any questions?
Just a small point of clarification on your fact sheet.
Sure.
The third and fourth boxes, you have 3625 Portage. Is that just a typo? It should be 3651?
Oh,
I'm sorry.
yeah, no, I know what you're saying. Sometimes the roll number will have multiple civic addresses associated with it. And within that roll number, the individual bids may have a different civic address. So what we might be seeing is that this bid is associated with 3625.
What about the bid above it, 25624? That's the premise ID. Premise address is 3651. You have a different bid number with a different address. I get what you're saying. but
Yeah.
Shouldn't the premise address be 3651, consistent with the top of the form?
That may be just the primary address on the
Okay.
realty roll number.
So it doesn't have to be the same?
Yeah, correct,
Okay,
yeah.
okay, thank you.
It can vary, yeah.
Yep. Otherwise, I'm fine.
Okay, Ms. Renfro?
I have no questions, thank you.
Okay, can you, we have a lease in place. It is an old lease, I understand that, but it is the one in place.
Correct, yeah.
Were there any step-ups through that lease?
That I'm not certain on. I don't have the lease document on file, obviously, for what's there. We would have received a mailer likely.
Right.
I'm not sure what the step-ups would have been, or if there were any step-up, maybe David will be able to provide some insight into that. But no, I'm not certain as to what the step-ups look
Okay,
like.
but this is the number that was reported on the INE?
Correct, yeah, so we would have looked at the full year prior to the reference date, so the mailers we would have been reviewing would have been the 2017 mailers. So this is likely from the 2017 mailer, $13 a square foot.
Okay. And then, despite the reported rental value, we have, your model is developing a base ARV of 1533.
Correct, yeah.
Just want to understand.
Yeah, so again, the model would review, when we're valuing a property, we don't just look at the lease in place, right? We do have to look to the market. So absolutely, when we're looking at rental comparables up to 1975, the model is going to factor those things in when we're calculating. The 13 also would have been included for analysis.
Correct.
But again, just because the lease in place is $13 doesn't mean that the model is going to say this winter should be 13 because that's the contract rent on an
That's right.
old lease, right? We
Right.
do have to factor in.
You're taking a look at.
Correct, yeah. So that's kind of that process in regards to modeling market data. And yeah, there typically would be a discrepancy between what the model comes up with and what the contract rent is.
And so when there is a discrepancy, in this case, the base is coming up higher.
Correct.
Do you take a closer look at that to see if?
Yeah, and that's
That's
part
a-
of the process in regards to looking at rental comparables. So again, when you're looking at something in the same block of portage, similar in size, showing 1650, the 1533 that the model is putting out doesn't seem unreasonable.
Okay. Thank you for that. Mr. Nichibek?
So just going through here quickly, we can see on page 2, just outlining where it's the complex that it's in. And on page 3, just there's the winter store. And then on page 4 is the lease summary from the client, showing that From 14 to 19, they were paying $13, and from 19 to 2024, they'll be paying $14, and from 24 to 29, they'll be paying $15, and then they will be renegotiating that amount in 2029. So overall, it was 35 years and 5 months lease. Now, where this gets a little tricky is that it's kind of semi-gross lease because they have a fixed CAM, common area maintenance charge there, at with a 5% increase. So effectively over time, it has lowered their triple net rate by about $1 because of the fixed CAM there. Going to the front page, just looking at the other winter store there at 2127 Pomina, in February 2017 to 2020, their next rate is 34,000 square feet, in $8. And then I just found the asking rent for this is the old Staples at 947 St. James at $12. So overall, asking a premise rate of $13 for a business assessment value of $431,472.
Thank you. Mr. Colatruglio, do you have any questions?
I do. Did you look at any rental comparables along Portage, or just these two here?
I was looking for similar to a Winners type store is what I was trying to find.
Okay.
Yeah, you'll find that sort of Winners maxes out of what they can pay for space just because of the type of business they have.
Okay. And then the lease information summary page.
Yep.
On the right-hand side, there's a comment in regards to the rental. Base rent is net, double net, triple net, semi-gross, gross. Looks like they put underneath triple net, is that?
Yeah, well, yeah, that's why they, except for the CAM, they've got CAM, fixed CAM. With 5% increase, right?
Typically with
So
the triple net, they would be recovering.
the landlord would be covering all the CAM.
Yeah, okay. And yeah, the comment in regards to the step-ups, I think is clear from this page, that there is some step-ups that were in place, that were set out, I guess, during the initial lease signing in 2003, correct? And anything prior to 2029, they renegotiated FMV, which is fair market value, correct? Perfect, no further questions.
Thank you very much. Ms. Rumpel, do you have any questions?
I have no questions, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Whitman?
I have none.
Okay, and I have no questions, so thank you for that. Let's just take a 10-minute break.
Sure.
Thank you. I'd like to call this meeting back to order. We're now going to continue with our docket, and I understand 2195 Pembina Highway, we have some circumstances around that. Perhaps you can...
Yeah, sure. So the business that was operating there is no longer operating out of that location. As of June 30th of 2019, we've gone ahead and processed a vacate for that business, so the annual rental value will effectively be reduced to zero, effective any date after, so July 1st, basically.
Of this year.
Of last year,
Last year.
2019. So in essence, for 2020 as a whole, there won't be any business assessment associated with that business that was in there, the part source. They've closed the doors on that. So the paperwork is kind of pending. As an exact timeline, it's hard to say exactly when that supplemental notice will come through, but there is one on the way.
All right.
So we're just asking for an adjournment on that one until
Okay.
hopefully it comes through in time.
All right. Okay, so we'll do that. We'll adjourn
Sure.
and then deal with the next step as required on this property.
Great.
Okay, thank you. All right, so then we'll go to 1585 Keniston Boulevard. Mr. Colatruglio, when you're ready.
So this is file number 19-5072. The address is Unit K3, 1585 Kenaston Boulevard. The business assessment ID 33202, and the business operating out of there is Mark's Work Warehouse. The total annual rental value under appeal, $244,680. The premise area there, 9,979 square feet, and the total ARV per square foot, $24.52, and that's based on a rental rate of $22.07, plus the occupancy cost to arrive at the annual rental value under appeal, $244,680. We do show a subject lease in place. Again, this is a older lease with a 15-year, 3-month term at $19.25 a square foot. I believe this lease is actually expired, and they're kind of operating on a month-to-month basis at this point in time. And I believe their plan is to relocate to another location. And that's information that comes from my discussion with the agent. What we did was we looked at rental comparables again. In this case, I did try to stick to Kenaston, and when I could, within that same 1585 Kenaston complex. So there is a range in regards to the reported rents per square foot, as low as $22 a square foot and as high as $27 a square foot. Some variation in the size of the subject compared to some of these comparables, and again, there are some older leases here as well, signed around the same time as the subject lease at a higher rate. So those were included for your guys' consideration as well. The 2207 modeled rent that we've applied in regards to comparing that to the rental comparables that we see kind of within this 1585 complex seems very reasonable, seems to be on the lower end of the range. And that's what we're kind of looking at in regards to the appropriateness of that rent. To me, it seems like it is supported by market evidence from right within that complex. And then the 1649, that's not within that same complex, but also on Kenaston, 2011 lease, 10 years, that one's at $24. It's a little bit smaller than the subject property. But again, there's a bit of a range. There is some size variation. We do have some larger premises, none as large as the subject property, but we do have one 8,019 square feet. That's unit J4 of 1585 Kenaston. That's at $23.50. And then we also have one of the older leases, 1585 Kenaston, unit J6. That's 7,117 square feet. That's at $23. So that was kind of our perspective on the rental rate and how we arrived at the annual rental value. Was a review of other leases, not just the subject lease from the subject property. Thank you very much. That's my presentation.
Thank you very much. Mr. Nishi-Beckingham, do you have any questions?
Yeah, just, I noticed a large number of these are sort of expired just as of pretty close to the evaluation date, or just slightly after. You don't have any of the updated lease information on that, do you?
No, some of it would be post-reference, right?
Yeah.
Some-
Pretty close to the reference date, but we're talking 16 years on 2002, will get you around April of 2018.
16 years and 10 months.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
And then 7 years.
Anything post-reference wouldn't have been put in.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. No questions then.
Thank you. Mr. Whitbread, do you have any questions?
No, nothing, thank you.
Mr. Is your Kelly?
I'm good, thank you.
And I'm good too.
Okay.
You don't have your copy already?
Thank you.
So I'm just one copy short on this one. Just give me a sheet I can have.
Oh, we went short?
I am. But,
Oh, I'm sorry.
nope, that's
Thought I
okay.
had enough here. Let me just check the back. Oh, no, it's Kevin's thing.
Yeah, that's the one,
Is that the one? Oh, that is the one. Yeah, there we go. I knew it. Couple typos in this one. I'll bring it out here. Just on the subject lease, February is 2014 to 2019. And then the estimated rent should be the 1925, not 23. And here I'll just quickly go through the second page, just showing the location of the subject. That's the Mark's Work Warehouse. Third page, just the street view of the Marks. And then on the fourth page, just the lease abstract that I've got from Mark's, showing the renewal of February 2014 to February 19 at $19.25. And then the renew and extend at fair market rents at February 2019 to 2024. And so I'll just go through the subject site here. Subject on the front page. The subject lease 2014 to 2019, 5-year term at $19.25. They renewed February 2019 for basically 1 year and 3 months to at $19.25, which was at the fair market rent. And then they'll be moving to a location what they've already signed a lease agreement for in April of 20 for 10,000 square feet at $19. But that's at 1753 Keniston. And we're asking for a premise rent of $19.25 for a business assessment of $216,500.
Mr. Colachuglio, do you have any questions?
So the post-reference renewal for February of 2019, that was at fair market rent, but they opted just to keep the rent at the 1925, correct? Yeah. And then the 1753 comparable is post-reference at $19. Was there any other rental comparables that were used that were prior to the reference date?
No, just the subject itself, 2014 and 2019.
Okay.
At
So
1925.
just the subject lease was looked at?
Yeah.
Okay, no further questions.
Mr. Whitbread, do you have any questions?
No, I'm good, thanks.
Ms. Ripley?
I'm good, thank you.
And I'm good too. Thank you. Let me just finish my thought here and then Okay, so now we'll go to 2065 Pamela Highway, number 11 on our docket. When we're ready, Mr. Colachuglio.
Thank you. It's file number 19-5146. The address 2065 Pembina Highway, the business assessment ID 31520, and the business name is Yisk Linen and Furniture. The annual rental value under appeal $354,180. The total area of the premise, 21,450 square feet, and the overall annual rental value per square foot, which includes the occupancy cost at $16.51 a square foot. That's based on two different rents applied to two different premises. So in this case, we have the main store area, 20,000 square feet, and then we have a storage mezzanine office area of 1,450 square feet. You'll notice that the occupancy costs are only applied to the main store, so we haven't accounted for heating and cooling costs for the office premise, mezzanine premise, only for that main floor, so keep that in mind. We come to a blended rent, I believe just over $14, but for the base rent, we're looking at $14.49 on 20,000 square feet. And then $10.58 for the office mezzanine space. The subject property lease shows January 2017, so a fairly recent lease with a reported area that matches what we show for the premise at $13 a square foot, so slightly lower than what the model has produced. But again, we don't just look at the contract rent, we do look to the market. So some of my analysis was looking at similar sized premises. Now, I didn't quite get to the 21,000, but there are some there that are 18,000, some a bit smaller. There is a range in regards to the rental rates, as low as $18.50 and as high as $25 a square foot. So when we're considering the $14.49 and the $10.58 and blending that and coming in at just over $14, again, we're on the lower side of what the market comparables would suggest. That is my presentation for this property. I'm open to any questions.
Thank you. Mr. Nishi-Beckingham, do you have any questions?
No questions.
No questions? Ms. Rumpel, do you have any questions?
I have no questions. Thank
Mr.
you.
Whitburn?
No, thanks.
No, I have no questions. When you're ready, Mr. Nishi-Beckingham?
Just going through here, just give on page 2, just an overview of the plaza location. And then on page 3, just showing the Yisks store. And so we looked at the subject site was October 16 to 19 at $13. We've got a renewal in October of 19 at $12.50. Then there's the, we looked at the winter store, which is basically 2 stories over from the subject, 34,000 square feet, February 17 to January 2000 at $8. And we are asking for a premise value of $12.50 for a business assessment of $320,600.
Okay. Mr. Colatruglia, do you have any questions?
I have no questions.
Mr. Whitburn?
No, thanks.
Ms. Rumpel? I have no questions. Okay, 915 Lila Avenue. When you're ready, Mr. Colatruglia.
All right, file number 19-5073. The address is unit 4-19, 915 Lila Avenue. The business assessment ID 7600. The owner is Mark's Work Warehouse. The annual rental value under appeal, $218 $8,760. The total area of the premise, 10,043 square feet. The overall annual rental value per square foot, including the occupancy costs, at $21.78. The base rent applied by the model, $19.33, and to arrive, and then adding in the occupancy cost to arrive at the annual rental value under appeal. We do show a lease in place for the subject property. It looks like a net rent at, with a October 2014 start, just under a 5-year term, at $19.17, very close to what the model is producing. And again, we looked to rental comparables from the market of similar sized units to get a sense of what the net rents would be for a similar type of space. There's a pretty large range in regards to the rents. At the comparables that I looked at, as low as $17.90 and as high as $31 a square foot for retail space, larger. And the 841 comparable at Leela, that one's a smaller unit, which may account for some of the higher rent that's there, but I mean, overall, some of these are very close in size, and there is a range there in regards to the rents. So the 1933 that we've applied seems reasonable upon review of market evidence. Thank you, that's my presentation.
Thank you. Mr. Nishibekina?
No questions.
Mr. Whitman?
No questions.
No questions.
Can I just ask what type of retail properties these are in your
Yeah,
portfolio?
sure.
Yeah, thanks. Since it is, some of them are quite a bit different.
Yeah, of course. So 1795 Henderson, that's like a drug mart slash, I guess there'd be a pharmacy in there potentially. 1674 Main Street, that's a dollar store. 841 Leela, that's like a suit store, like a formal wear.
Okay.
And 1050 Leela is another drugstore.
So none of these are, well, maybe the formal wear store might be a little similar.
Yeah, if you're talking about clothing
The others are-
stores, yeah, and so we don't hang up, we don't get hung up too much on what the tenant's business is per se in regards to looking at comparables, because retail space can be adapted to suit many needs, right? And so when we're looking at stores, retail space, we don't necessarily just limit our perspective to businesses of the same type of nature as the subject. We, again, just similar type of retail space as opposed to similar types of businesses.
I'm not familiar with this area, but is this a standalone building or is it part of a?
I think this is a unit on a strip, and maybe David's package will have some more insight on that. The business assessment briefs that we put in don't typically have photos and that, but I believe this was a unit that's part of a larger, maybe strip development there on Layla.
We did hear a comment earlier today that standalones generally command a higher rent than in a strip, is that?
I don't know if it would necessarily apply for this size of a unit.
Okay. Because of the size?
Yeah, like the Walmarts, I could see maybe there being an argument, but even then, like some of the Walmarts, they're physically attached to a mall, or there is some benefit that comes from that.
Mm-hmm.
But in these cases, I think a lot of these are units as part of a large, like the comparables that I've used, are also attached to other businesses or commercial rental units. So I don't necessarily think that it being a standalone or not a standalone would have much effect.
Okay.
Especially for this type of business. I don't think they benefit in any way of having their own store compared to being attached to a store. I think maybe there would even be an argument to suggest that if there's a store next door, maybe some of those customers will also go into the other store, right?
Mhm.
So
Okay, thank you for that. Mr. Nishi-Beckett?
Sure. Just a quick comment on the discussion that was held here. These type of stores are the CRU spaces that the Walmart can't, like when I was using the Walmart as an example, standalone store, having to pay a higher rent because there's only a few CRU spaces to put those costs onto. These are one of the fewer CRU spaces that they can put those costs onto. So if you look at page 2 of my submission, you'll see that Google got it right on the dot there. That's the little strip where the Mark's Work Warehouse is in relation to the other large format stores that are there. And then on page 3, you can just see the store itself there at the end of that strip. So basically for this one, there was a lease in place from October 2014 to 2019 at $19.17. This was the second option at a predetermined rate from their 2004 agreement. They negotiated the fair market rents again after the fact at October of 2019 at $17.50 being the fair market rent. And for some reason that subject line came across twice. So just take that second subject line out there. So we're asking for the premise rent of the $17.50, giving a total business assessment of $200,300. And then just on the page 3, I just included the summaries from the Mark's summary page of their leases. The renewal agreement version 2, section 3B was basically showing at fair market rents versus their version 1, which is the predetermined rates. That refers to sections in the lease. And that's my submission.
Thank you. Mr. Colatrubian?
So no rental comparables was looked at beyond the subject?
No.
And the rental rate that you're using is based on a post-reference re-signing of the lease?
Yeah, it's a post-reference renegotiation at fair market rents.
Okay. No further questions.
Mr. Whitbread, do you have any
Nothing,
questions?
thank you.
Ms. Rinkle?
No,
And I have no questions. So thank you. That concludes our hearing today. Thank you very